So today we're going to talk about shapes and how they relate to improvisation and how it can change your thinking on the way that you approach what you play. So first of all, what do I mean by shapes? Well, shapes are just another way of thinking about interval combinations and layout. So if you were to look at a transcription or a line on paper, it's literally the way it moves across the page. Does it go up and down rapidly, or does it go smoothly up and down? Are there some parts that go smoothly followed by sharp angles in the playing? And shapes are just notes, right? But I would argue if we think about them on their own as separate entities, our notes and the notes we choose to play will take on a different life because we can approach it from different ways. How angular do we want it to be? How smooth do we want it to be? Thoughts like that start floating around in our mind, and it really changes what we play. And if you look at the playing of the masters, particularly Charlie Parker comes to mind, it's those interval combinations and the shapes that they create that I believe is a really big part of what makes somebody like his playing so compelling. So let's dive into it. So we're going to use a really short and simple shape, break it down, and then we're going to use it over a tune and do a couple different things with it. So let's look at this shape over an F major 7 chord. It's only 4 notes, but it has a really interesting shape. So it starts on an A, it jumps up to a C. That is the interval of a third, and the direction is going up. And we want to think about both of those things. So I would call a third medium interval, a little bit wider than a second, but not as wide as a fourth or fifth or a sixth. So let's say we're using a medium interval going up. And this is just my terminology. You can think about it however you want. This just makes sense to my brain. All right, now what happens? We come back down and we do that with a wider interval. So we come down in the interval of a fourth. So because this is the widest interval in this little snippet that I'm showing you, let's call it a wide interval. So we'll say we have a wide interval coming down. That's the second part of our shape. Then we finish it up with a second going down. So let's call that a narrow interval going down. So 3 parts to this shape: a medium interval going up, a wide interval going down, and then a narrow interval going down. So I think the simplest way to sort of flush this idea out and put it in a real life situation is to use this exact shape on beat 1 over a jazz standard. So let's choose It Could Happen to You. Now we're going to do this in the key of my tenor saxophone, just so you all know that. This is transposed into B flat. So what I'm going to do is actually very, very simple. I'm going to use this same shape on beat 1 of every single measure in It Could Happen to You, but I'm going to fit it to the different chords that are happening. And what I'm not going to do is take this and translate it directly. So in the original shape, it was 3, 5, 2, 1. I'm not going to limit myself to playing 3, 5, 2, 1 over every single chord change. That's a different way of working on music. That's sequencing or vocabulary and moving it to all these different keys. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm simply trying to recreate the shape. And remember, the shape was medium interval up, large interval down, narrow interval down. So I can start on whatever note I want to on any given chord, but what I'm going to try to maintain is the integrity of the shape wherever I play it over whatever chord I play it over. And remember, we're also not doing, okay, you have to play a third first, then a fourth, then a second. That's not the case. A lot of the time it will work out that way, but that is not a requirement. I'm simply trying to keep a close shape to what I started with those different interval combinations. So it doesn't have to be exact. All right, so now let's check out what this might look like on beat 1 of every single measure over this tune, seeing if we can maintain the shape, but not start on the same note of every chord. wouldn't do is write that down like I just did. That is only for the purposes of the video, so you can see what ended up coming out of it. I would be trying to do this up here, and I might have to slow the tempo down a lot, but it's this act of thinking about a shape and trying to fit the shape to every chord symbol that is really going to be advantageous to your playing and is really going to break you out of some of the habits that you have and force you to play something a little bit different. So that would be step one. And if you're not ready for a 32 bar jazz standard that has a lot of different chords in it, simply do it over the blues. That's what I always tell my students, is if something is too intimidating, put it over the blues, start there, then you can work your way into more complicated tunes. All right, now what else could I do with this? So the beautiful thing about this, especially this short little phrase, is that I can work on a bunch of different things. I'm always going to be obviously working on the shape, but I can also work on rhythm and rhythmic freedom using this exact same thing. Now, if I just move it around to different parts of the bar and start combining this 4-note shape, maybe one after another, I can start it on the beat, I can start it off the beats, I can play it over the bar line. There are so many things I can do with this simple little 4-note shape. It boggles the mind. I could work on this for hours and weeks and months without having to come up with something new. I'm simply trying to get the most out of a very, very simple piece of information. So after I've been working on this for a while and I'm starting to get really, really comfortable, maybe playing it on 1 or maybe playing it on beat 2, and I'm starting to learn some new ways of getting around the chords, I'm sort of reprogramming my brain and my fingers, my practice might turn into something that looks like this. So you can see what I'm doing here is I'm just freely moving with that shape. I'm putting it all over the bar, on the beat, off the beat, every beat of the measure, over the bar line, combining multiple shapes together to create something that sounds cool. And the entire time, I'm dealing with a shape, I'm dealing with the harmony, and I'm dealing with rhythmic placement within the bar. Really, what else is there to music? So if you're looking for a new way to practice, this might be a really great way, particularly if you are visual like I am. I'm a super visual learner. Shapes make sense to me, and I found tremendous success thinking about my improvisation in terms of these shapes, rather than just thinking about these long strings of notes and then trying to be as flexible as I can be with whatever shape I come up with. And the beautiful thing is these shapes are everywhere. So you could look in the Omni book, you could look at a John Coltrane transcription, anybody literally, and you could just take the shape of what they're playing, independent of what the notes are, put your own notes to it, and start practicing it in this exact same fashion. So let me know what you think. Is this something that you do in the practice room already? Is this something that you feel like could be beneficial and useful for you like it has been for me? Let me know in the comments below. I do read all of those and I try to get back to as many as I can. So if you enjoyed this video, please do click the thumbs up. That really helps us to get it out to more musicians just like you. Don't hesitate to click that subscribe and turn on the bell so that you know when we put out a video. And most of all, thank you for taking your precious time to watch this video, and I hope you got something out of the time you spent here. Thanks a lot, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good one.